我过去大概几年之间跟白老师一起工作，那么发现，其实白老师是一个文学家，对于文字字字斟酌。那今天我们其实运气还不错，因为还好白老师没有办法听中文或者普通话，要不然的话，同时要一边听日文一边听中文，要控制两边的翻译就很麻烦。谢谢白老师。我顺便提醒大家一下，我们邀请各位重要的一些讲者，在这个论坛里面针对的题目的发言，就是我们整个论坛的大题目，叫做“变动中的世界，变动中的想象”，是在这个大的框架里面进行发言的。所以在这个框架里面去理解白先生的讲法。那么我同时提醒一下，等一下发言的同仁们，就是说提问的同仁们，最好能够促进这几位先生之间的一些对话，也就是你们听到的一些问题，请他们彼此之间可以有一些讨论。好，我们现在继续进行，请乔德吉教授开始发言。
Thank you very much. I spoke for a long time yesterday, so I will try to the allotted 20 minutes. The main theme of my talk today is called Culture and the New Forms of Global Power. And I begin by referring you to some recent controversies that have emerged, especially centering around the recently concluded annual meeting of the General Assembly of the United Nations. At those meetings, several leaders from Asian and African countries raised the question of cultural values in the context of national sovereignty and international obligations, referring to the loud and sometimes violent protests in many countries over a short online video made in the United States and circulating on YouTube, ridiculing the Prophet Muhammad. President Mohamed Morsi of Egypt condemned the violence in which the US ambassador to Libya was killed, but he rejected the argument made by President Obama in the General Assembly on the previous day, defending the concept of unhindered free speech as a cherished moral value. Morsi said, Egypt respects freedom of expression that is not used to incite hatred against anyone. He went on to argue, we expect from others, as they expect from us, that they respect our cultural specifics and religious references and not seek to impose concepts or cultures that are unacceptable to us. Similar arguments were made in the General Assembly by the presidents of Iran, Pakistan, and Yemen. The question of cultural relativism and its limits has, it would seem, emerged once more on these global scenes. There are many controversial aspects of this question that could be discussed here. It could be pointed out, for instance, that the supposedly universal human right of free speech emerged in Europe and was adopted in the United States after a very specific history of religious wars and struggles against the church and the absolute state. Other countries do not necessarily have a similar history where free speech was closely tied to religious reform and criticism of religious institutions. Second, it could be pointed out that there are varying limits to this right in different Western countries. Some have an established church and laws against blasphemy. In others, the right is limited by laws of defamation and libel, or of contempt of court, or the threat of disturbing the peace. All Western countries, including the United States, limit the right of free speech by the right of the state to protect its diplomatic and military secrets. But even granting the general claims made on behalf of free speech, it could be shown that this is only a right of the citizen against the state, preventing the state from interfering with the right of citizens to say what they want, even if those words are stupid or hateful. It does not preclude different authorities in society from regulating what could or could not be said in particular institutions or situations. Thus, what the print or broadcasting or online media will allow is regulated by the editorial policy of each organization. What can be said in a public meeting is regulated by its organizers. What is acceptable speech in a social gathering is carefully regulated by social conventions. As everyone knows, what may be tolerated in a gathering of intimate friends could be quite unacceptable among strangers. What is acceptable speech in an all-male gathering of drinking companions is very different from that in a mixed gathering of churchgoers. The right of free speech does not mean that speech is unregulated. All it means is that the state is not the agency that does the regulating. Outside the organs of the state, in diverse social institutions, ranging from the family, to the school, to the sports arena, to art, to public debate, there is continuing contestation in all Western countries about the limits to speech in particular social situations and the power of different social authorities to regulate speech. It has often been noted about the United States that in spite of the constitutionally guaranteed right of free speech, there is actually much greater control over what can be said in public in that country than in many other countries that do not grant the constitutional right. The situation is quite different in the countries of Asia. Here the state often lays down the limits to public speech and punishes those who violate the regulations. Sometimes the offense could be criticism of the government or of officials in power. At other times, it could be the violation of social conventions of decency or religious belief. Thus, in many countries, including liberal democracies such as India, where free speech is a fundamental right of citizens, speech that insults or spreads hatred for communities can be prohibited by the state. But regardless of the nature of the violation, these acts of regulation by state authorities are frequently the subject of debate and criticism. Simply because the state is seen to be the regulating authority does not mean that its acts are beyond public scrutiny and debate. The seriousness of these debates and their consequences for changing state practices is a matter of the domestic politics of different states. They are deeply connected with broader political debates and movements in different countries of the world. The issue has come to the fore in the latest controversy is whether one country can impose its cultural values on another. There is a general principle recognized by the Charter of the United Nations that each nation state must respect the sovereignty of other nation states and not interfere in its internal matters. In the cultural sphere, sovereignty has generally meant that states have tried to control the print or visual material coming into the country from across its borders. Thus, many countries have agencies that inspect foreign books and magazines and foreign films and videos and prohibit those with unacceptable political or cultural content. Many such prohibitions have caused national and international controversy. However, a new difficulty has emerged with the spread of internet communication. The speed and range of the new global networks make it very difficult, if not impossible, for national governments to control the flow of what textual and visual content passes through the web. State agencies appear to be unable or unwilling to regulate these flows, while other social authorities that could impose recognized and stable practices of self-regulation have still not emerged. It is in this situation of flux that many of the latest controversies about culture and power in the global context have occurred. But while the novelty and as yet unregulated nature of global networks of electronic communication may be the immediate context of many of these controversies, there is a deeper root to the latest complaints about cultural imperialism. This root lies in the changing formation of global power. Unlike the defensive self-assertion of Asian anti-colonial movements of the 19th and 20th century, complaining of victimhood at the hands of hegemonic imperial powers, there is now a more confident demand to seek a new balance in global power in which the victims of yesterday will have a voice in deciding the shape of global modernity. There is a demand, in other words, to redefine the cultural content of modernity. To put it simply, there was at the beginning of the 20th century a vision of modernity historically originating in Western Europe and spreading to the American lands settled by Europeans, that was projected as the universally desirable content of modernity everywhere in the world. Max Weber described this content as consisting of the increasingly productive nature of the economy, bureaucratic rationalization of state and private organizations, and the secularization of education, art, and public life. European colonial regimes in different parts of Asia and Africa tried with varying degrees of success to introduce these cultural values into colonial societies. With the end of the old empires, this project of modernization of society was taken over by many post-colonial regimes as well as by international agencies. Of course, there were critiques of these claims to universal desirability of Western modernity. The dominant version of the sociology of modernization and development was challenged from several quarters, most notably by those who used Marxist critiques of global capitalism and others who challenged the intellectual hegemony of post-Enlightenment disciplines of social knowledge. These critiques sometimes found institutional space in the universities and academies of several countries in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Especially in the 1970s and 1980s, there even emerged some significant networks, journals, and publishers that connected these otherwise disparate scholars and institutions located in different countries into identifiable groups and schools of anti-hegemonic sociological thought. The dependency school was probably the most famous of these intellectual movements, followed among others by feminist and environmental critiques of development, subaltern studies, and what has come to be called post-colonial studies. These trends even managed to break into the Western academy more in some disciplines and universities than in others. But it would not be wrong to say that their presence was on the whole marginal to the institutional structure of disciplinary knowledge in the social sciences. In the meantime, something else was happening in the structure of global power. The fall of the socialist regimes in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe seemed to mark the emergence of a unipolar world order in which Western dominance and the leadership of the United States apparently became unquestioned. This was also the beginning of what came to be called the era of globalization. The anti-colonial critiques of the 1970s seemed to lose their bite. In the absence of viable alternative trajectories of development, the former third world projects of self-reliance and independent growth fell flat. From the 1990s, the age of globalization seemed also to re-establish on unchallenged foundations the claims of Western modernity as the only universal form of modernity. However, under the surface of globalization, a structural change was taking place whose ramifications have only become clear since the financial crisis of 2008. The last 2 decades of the 20th century saw the emergence of a new mode of flexible production and accumulation and the rapid expansion of the international financial markets. The result was that the emerging economies of Asia became the sites for rapid growth of industrial manufacturing, fueled by exports to the older capitalist economies of the West, while the latter sought to profit from global financial speculation and a disorganized and dispirited working class at home. Soon, the Asian economies became dependent for their growth on continued exports to the West, while Western economies encouraged consumers to borrow beyond their means to maintain their levels of consumption. In addition, major Western powers also incurred huge debts to finance their military expenditure in order to maintain their political dominance in different parts of the world. This was the process that has led to the recent financial and debt crisis in the United States and Europe. I will not speculate on when and how this crisis might be resolved. However, it seems that the ability of Western capitalism to offer a prolonged period of half a century of growing prosperity to all or almost all of its people may have now come to an end. But it is also becoming clear that the austerities and fall in living standards that have become inevitable will be very unequally distributed among the different countries in the Western world, as well as within each country. Already we see the spectacle of the countries of Southern Europe having to face the brunt of the austerity measures proposed to save the Eurozone from collapse. It is by no means a distant possibility that many of these countries might have to leave the Eurozone rather than bear the devastating and deeply unequal consequences of saving the ideological integrity of Europe. What will be the consequences for social harmony and political tranquility in those countries in the face of an economic and social catastrophe unknown in the recent history of the West? Not only that, there will inevitably emerge a huge asymmetry between the declining economic power of the United States and Europe and the continuing and overwhelming military superiority of the US and the NATO alliance. What will be the consequences for the intellectual hegemony of the Western conception of modernity? We could certainly see renewed critiques of the capitalist social order as it has come to exist, with growing inequalities on a scale not seen in at least half a century. But we could also see other much more unsavory developments. The economic decline of the once privileged is fertile ground for the ugly display of naked power. There are signs already of a growing populist politics in the United States and Western Europe, seeking to defend the global privileges of the core body of citizens of those countries against the assertions of lesser powers and the intrusion of alien immigrants. That form of politics could claim increasing resort to preemptive strikes, overthrow of regimes, and military occupation of other countries. Thus, populist imperialism as well as xenophobia could emerge in the West on a scale similar to that in the years before World War I. On the other hand, the impact on the emerging economies of Asia, Africa, and Latin America is also unpredictable. Like capitalist growth in earlier historical periods, the recent growth in Asian economies has been accompanied by the massive dissociation of primary producers from their means of production, something that has been called accumulation by distribution. But the effects of this process cannot be politically managed today in the same way that the so-called primitive accumulation was managed in Europe in the 18th and 19th century. This is reflected in a series of popular resistances to official development projects in many Asian countries today. An entire range of questions have appeared in course of the recent experience of economic and political transformation in these countries, whose answers are not to be found in the history of capitalism or democracy in the West. The classical theories of Western sociology have thus ceased to be normative for the rest of the world. Indeed, one could go one step further and say that many hallowed norms of Western sociological theory need to be rethought today. Let me point to just a few examples. What are we to make of the sociological and cultural roots of Chinese capitalism, brought to a position of global importance by a communist party exercising authoritarian powers in a one-party state, and now threatening to bring about a tectonic shift in the very foundations of global economic power? Will revisions of or supplements to the Marxian or Weberian account suffice, or will it require a redefinition of capitalism itself? Or take the examples of Indian or South African democracy, where many emerging practices have deviated so far from the canonical principles of liberal democracy in the West as to be unrecognizable even as a family resemblance. For instance, the idea that arbitrary power that promotes the good is often preferable to legal bureaucratic rationality that perpetuates inaction has struck deep roots within legislative, executive, and even judicial practices in these two democracies. Are these to be seen as aberrations, or do they suggest a rethinking of the received canons of democratic practice? The recent upsurges in the Arab world have upset many stable authoritarian regimes propped up for decades by an equilibrium in great power relations. The urge for greater popular participation in government in those countries could well produce democratic structures that do not abide at all by the canonical principles of state secularism. The demand made by President Morsi of Egypt in the UN General Assembly reflects this historic development. Or take the many remarkable examples of social entitlements now recognized by government agencies in Brazil. They demand a rethinking of the very idea of the welfare state. Fundamentally, it seems to me that we are at a moment when the universal claims of Western modernity are facing intellectual disintegration. It may not be a very tidy process, but 20th century social thought is now in the process of being rewritten for a new century and a new world. The cultural controversies are therefore only a symptom of these larger historical contestations. Critical thinkers in different Asian countries must find new ways to communicate and think together on these vital questions affecting the future of our peoples. Thank you.
Thanks so much, for the succinct questioning and giving us a task for the future. Without further ado, let's invite Professor Itagaki, the third speaker.
Thank you very much, moderators, the theme of my speech is terminal symptoms, Euro-Americocentrism, and an alternative path for the Japanese. I read my text. Quote down fall into the abyss of chaotic world. The world where we live now is of an unprecedentedly lawless conditions. Why has such a world emerged? It is an outcome of the wicked themes repeated by moribund Euro-Americocentrism to seek its own narrow survival. At present, both the USA and West Europe are facing ethical crises simultaneously in the course of global maneuvers under the unavoidable deterioration of the hegemonic power. Ethical crises, yes, those regarding not only guilty conducts in political, economical, financial, military, informational, and environmental fields relevant to the so-called war on terror in the 21st century, but also the historical process of rude intervention to the Middle East throughout centuries since the Crusades. The State of Israel was founded in 1948 as a settler state. This self-appointed outpost of the West was the product of interconnection between anti-Semitism to discriminate and colonize the Jewish, and ambivalent antagonism against Islam to fear and humiliate Muslims. It has since been explained that the State of Israel was established as recompense for Jewish people who experienced the tragic Holocaust, an ultimate phase of persecution of Jews in Europe. In this context, however, the most significant is that the recompense has been done not by real pains of Europeans themselves, but by victimization of Palestinians. Therefore, Euro-Americocentrism has to hold to the artificial status quo since 1948. Depicting the problem of an irreconcilable easy conflict to be resolved through goodwill mediation by international community. The Palestine question has been precipitated into a deadlock inevitably, and articulate voices of dissent, wrong, and protest to every injustice alike can be heard in the various corners of the world. Accordingly, Euro-Americocentrism, accountable to the unjust world order, has come to present its terminal symptoms. It constantly needs extraordinary emergency to appear one after another. Thus, a series of false flag surprise events, naked military invasions, manipulated regime changes, that is, fabrication of revolutions, and human rights violations were launched under the name of war on terror as an endless process, utilizing Westerners' deep-rooted hate toward Islam to fake the threat of Muslim terrorism. Furthermore, all those who look at Euro-Americocentric world order critically tend to be treated as adversary contenders targeted in the war on terror. Since 2006, the US has conducted large-scale military exercises to oppose Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. In the Vigilant Shield 07 war game, hypothetical or imaginary enemies were Birmingham, the code name of Iran, Nemati, North Korea, Lubeck, Russia, and Chulia, China. And the conventional concept of war has been remarkably transformed, along with the idea of low-intensity conflict, counterinsurgency, and or peacekeeping operations of the 1980s and 90s. An innovation has come out to focus non-state actors and even non-combatants as main elements among warfare actors. In fact, a functional difference between police and military became ambiguous, and military assault on citizens' daily life is no longer an exceptional case under the situation of war on terror. Such a war on terror, resorting to fierce terrorism, evokes the responding terrorism. It produces further terrorism. It is the nature of the war on terror that it needs failure, defeat, and setback, rather than success, victory, and euphoria, in order to sustain, proliferate, and metastasize itself. It necessarily becomes indefinite, multifaceted, and exhausting belligerency, the pretext of retaliation or punishment or prevention encourages preemptive strikes. At the opening of the 21st century, the neoconservatives inside George W. Bush administration seemingly succeeded in setting a bylaw to take measures beyond the U.S. Constitution, statutory system, Geneva Conventions, and international law as a whole. Throughout the wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, Gaza, and so on, and many cases of illegal and immoral violations have been exposed by chance. Once US, European, and Israeli leaders could behave exempted from war crime accountability with impunity, such legal disregards and violations begin unlimited extension internally and externally. Lawlessness is a consequence of the logic of emergency manipulation. Nobody can deny that Barack Obama's presidency has also stepped forward this bylaw instead of promised change, infringing habeas corpus and due process. US citizens are consciously or unconsciously getting more and more deprived of democratic freedom in a surveillance society which traces suspects aiding and abetting terrorists through the watching activities of Homeland Security Department, Pentagon's National Security Agency, and so forth. National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 gives President the power to detain people, including US citizens, indefinitely in military prisons without charges or trial. Hypocrisy of the paternal US government to evaluate annually human rights progress in foreign countries is deplored by common sense worldwide. The Western impulse to expand wars incessantly is plunging the whole world into an acute unrest. It might be not wrong to assume that Euramerican cannot help being viewed as running a futile survival project for, so to speak, personal bankruptcy, to declare its inability to pay back ethical debts in the direction of having them absolved, aiming to make the entire humankind share and shoulder the burden for ultimate settlement in the very desperate abyss of chaotic world. What impedes a paradigm shift for reorientation? Very ironically, the lawless world in which the stronger preys upon the weaker is playing with the logic of rule of law. Arbitrary state power is armored solidly with international law. This opportunistic discourse started from the story of the Westphalian world order, as discussed fully by Professor Chatterjee yesterday. On an evolving nation-state system in Europe since the mid-17th century, each state power initiated to consolidate its own territorial entity as the conduct of sovereignty and reciprocal agreement among the members of the Sovereign States Club of Europe. When territorial disputes in relation to the dynastic inheritance or national status took place among states, they reached a settlement of compromise, even if temporarily through war and peace. Concerning such an international jurisprudence across the regions and sects, Europeans had learned much from Islamic Sharia through diplomatic relations and practices with the Ottoman Empire in the 16th century. Thanks to the lesson, Europeans got modernized to overcome the idea cuius regio, eius religio. The monarch's religion is the religion of its territory, and to adapt themselves to tolerance among Christians to end wars of religion. However, they put bias to the notion of territory and its boundary as the fundamental basis of sovereignty due to their physiocratic-oriented myth of land. The very agrarian notion of territory was applied extensively to the sea, too. And the sovereign states in Europe formed the nucleus of the international community, which would permeate the globe later as the whole world system as described by Immanuel Wallerstein in the 20th century. European nation-states rivaled in instigating ethno-religious conflicts inside the Ottoman Empire to tear it apart. That is the Eastern question, the so-called Eastern question in the 18th century and the first half of the 19th. Then, in the age of imperialism, the globe was totally partitioned out by powers, among which Japan participated in competing scramble for territorial expansion to proclaim occupatio of terra nullius, land belonging to no one, and demonstrated effective control. All those concepts and terminology applied in world partition movement by hegemonic powers after the 1880s are certifying particularly arbitrariness, self-righteousness, and arrogance of shame-free imperialistic international law at that time. Land or isles or leaf outside of the reach of Western international community were terra nullius, whereas historical background as well as indigenous or concerned people's social life were fatally ignored. On the other hand, jurists, geographers, cartographers, ethnologists, linguists, anthropologists, biologists, oceanographers, meteorologists, epidemiologists, etc. of Western academia endorsed the self-declared de facto dominion by a winner in the powers game of musical chairs. As the 19th century Japan, at the handicapped position, suffering from the unequal treaties with Western powers, its sharply cunning action to procure Taiwan, Korea, and South Sakhalin as colonies and to incorporate Senkaku Islands and Tokto or Takeshima to Japan was very conspicuous for steps to enroll itself in the Western imperialist club. After World War II, that is to say, in both occasions of the conclusion of the San Francisco Peace Treaty in 1951 and the return of administrative rights over Okinawa to Japan in 1972, the U.S. cleverly implanted the hidden seas of disputes between Japan and China and between Japan and Korea as well for future manipulation. Now, at the crucial moment of Euro-Americocentrism sunset, Japan has helped ignite international territorial controversy on the conventional basis of maintaining persistently its inherent sovereignty over the islands in question by neglecting internationally the historical responsibility to enforce sex slaves issue on one hand, and by challenging unawares to decide provocative nationalization of islands, mainly for domestic politics, on the other. Anachronism and stupidity are difficult to conceive in Japan's decision-making process. However, the rise of hawkish nationalistic tide in Japan is not negligible, while accidental armed collision caused by aggravation of international tensions is also not unpredictable. Copies of an appeal by Japanese citizens, of which I am one of the signatories, are distributed for your reference today in this session. Please have a look and understand that though there are grassroots people of Japan who firmly stand on the side of peace and cooperation, gazing at the truth of history. It is a long time since the end of Euro-Americocentrism became a hot topic among intellectuals worldwide, of course including Westerners. Intelligent people are about to get aware of postmodern discourse in the context of survival tactics of Euro-Americocentrism. My idea here is somewhat different from the one of Professor Peck, unfortunately. International organizations are also under restructuring, despite of all those innovative tendencies and devices. A traditional way of thinking based on Euro-Americocentrism is still vulnerable. We can observe mass media and education still staying content with an intimate state of adaptation to Euro-Americocentric discourse at the global level. Generally speaking, universities in Asia are also taking a role of disciples of Euro-Americocentrism. Without a decisive change of our knowledge system, we must be unable to tackle the tasks to visualize a new world order to be realized. Finally, an alternative path for the Japanese. The Japanese should take an initiative to soften the framework of the nation-state through multiplying their own identity by means of sober and sincere reflections on the history of Japan. They have sound foundation of two focal experiences of 1945 and 2011. The former is remorse of conscience for the past of aggression and colonial rule, the product of which is the Constitution renouncing military force and right to belligerency. The latter is an oath of breaking with nuclear power generation after the Fukushima nuclear disaster and the lasting contamination of the globe, confirming the determination of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to attain a nuclear-free world. The Japanese should be ready to raise to Asian nations a serious proposal for sharing a new way of thinking with all of them to overcome the worn-out Euro-American-centric world order based on power politics and hegemony. The model of new thinking had already been presented on the occasion of the Afro-Asian Conference in 1955, held at Bandung of Indonesia, which was represented by 29 countries from Asia and Africa. Jawaharlal Nehru, Zhou Enlai, Sukarno, and Gamal Abdel Nasser collaborated a declaration on promotion of world peace and cooperation based upon 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, a Panchasila, an agreement between China and India in 1954, the year before. Panchasila, 1, mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty. 2, mutual non-aggression. 3, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs. 4, equality and mutual benefit. 5, peaceful coexistence. Jawaharlal Nehru said, if these principles were recognized in the mutual relations of all countries, then indeed there would hardly be any conflict and certainly no war. Zhou Enlai's initiative to suspend territorial issues was an Oriental wisdom. The Panchasila is a memorial keystone to be developed for shaping a new world order. Some critics in Japan did cynical remarks saying pre-modern documents are meaningless for the settlement of territorial disputes today. Look at East Asia in the mid-17th century, the age of China Imari, according to my naming. I named the mid-17th century as the age of China Imari. Russia reached Bering Strait at the stretch. Being linked with it, Qing dynasty swallowed China and threatened Korea. The Dutch East India Company opened its activity with a base in Java, occupying Formosa, Taiwan. Japan's Tokugawa Shogunate strained foreign trade control, prohibiting Christianity, while Iwami silver flooded out of Japan to command world market. In such circumstances, Japan's Imari, exporting porcelain, replaced Jindagen under workshops closure by a Qing government order for some decades. Even after the opening, Chinaware were sold to Europe as Imari. Throughout this period, East Asia was connected with the Islamic world and Europe, and commercial mediators, bands of multi-ethnic traders, pirates, administrators, resistance fighters, extended free activities on the sea, encircled by Irago, Janzhou, Ryukyu, Macau, Formosa, and the Philippines, against and or with surrounding authorities. Let us see Zen Chenggong, the parents, Father Ziron of Fujian origin, leader of big merchant convoy, speaker of various languages including Nanjing Mandarin, Japanese, Spanish, Portuguese, and Dutch, bearing Christian name Nicholas. He was caught and executed by Qing authority. Zeron's mother, Tagawa Matsu of Hirado origin, a Japanese lady, killed herself while fighting against troops in Fujian. The sea around Diaoyu Island was once the stage of activity by such free people in the age when the Western international law was about to be formulated. Age of Westphalian world system is an abstractive naming interpreting Euro-Americocentric history, but Age of Imari has vivid images to encourage our imagination deep. Do you agree that we should search for the seas and the islands of freedom and networking by reminding not age of Westphalian system, but age of Imari in the dynamic world in transition, ever and now? Thank you very much.